The sun scorched the runway as tension gripped the air like a vice. An F-16 fighter jet, sleek, deadly, and worth millions, sat dead in silence, refusing to start. Engineers scrambled around it, shouting over radios, drenched in sweat and frustration. A critical mission hung in the balance, and every second lost pushed them closer to disaster. No one had a solution. No one even dared to hope. Then, from the edge of the chaos, a figure stepped forward, slow, steady, forgotten. A black veteran, long retired, dismissed by time. They laughed when he approached, but what he did next stunned everyone into silence. His name was Elijah Steele Morgan, a name once spoken with awe across military hangars and war zones. For over 3 decades, he served as one of the Air Force's most trusted aircraft engineers. No degree from fancy colleges, no shiny titles, just raw talent, unshakable nerves, and hands that could feel the heartbeat of a machine. In the chaos of combat zones, when jets failed mid-mission, it was Elijah they called. He didn't fix machines. He resurrected them. But time, as always, moved on. Younger engineers came. Technology changed. Elijah retired quietly, with no parade, no farewell salute. He disappeared into the background like so many forgotten warriors, black men who built empires behind the scenes but were rarely seen in the spotlight. That morning, he hadn't come to save anyone. He was just visiting the base to drop off something for an old friend, maybe a toolbox, maybe a memory. But fate had other plans. He noticed the panic before anyone even explained it. He felt the silence of the dead jet before touching it. Because Elijah had seen this before. And deep down, he knew this was his moment again. The runway had never been this loud or this helpless. The F-16, assigned to a classified mission, was scheduled to be airborne within the hour. Its payload was sensitive. The target, unknown to most. All anyone knew was that failure wasn't an option. One jet, one pilot, one shot, and now, with the clock ticking mercilessly, the jet refused to start. Mechanics swarmed like ants, tools clanking, commands being barked over radios. Panels were ripped open, diagnostics run, wires tested. Nothing. The onboard computer gave a vague fault reading, useless, frustrating. A $20 million jet, paralyzed by a problem no one could identify. Tension grew with every second. The commander paced like a storm cloud, snapping at techs, demanding answers. The mission window was closing fast, and every delay put lives at risk, maybe even global consequences. Some whispered about scrubbing the mission. Others tried to reboot the system from scratch. Still, the engine sat cold, silent, dead. That's when someone noticed him, standing near the fence, arms folded, eyes fixed on the aircraft like it was speaking a language only he understood. Elijah Morgan didn't say a word. He didn't need to. The look in his eyes said it all. I've seen this before. He took a step forward. One of the young engineers scoffed. Old man, this isn't your era anymore. The commander glanced at Elijah, then back at the jet, and finally said 5 words that changed everything. Let him take a look. The moment hung in the air like a held breath. With the commander's nod, the crowd parted slightly, uncertain. Elijah stepped forward, not with arrogance, not with rush, but with the quiet authority of a man who didn't need to prove anything. His boots touched the runway like it was sacred ground. His eyes never left the jet. Young engineers stood frozen, tools in hand, watching this older black man, gray at the temples, grease on his jeans, approach the aircraft like he'd built it himself. Some smirked. Others whispered. He doesn't even have clearance. This isn't a museum piece. Just let him fail and get it over with. But Elijah wasn't listening. He didn't care who was watching. He placed his hand gently on the aircraft's body, feeling its surface like a doctor reading a silent heartbeat. Then he crouched, eyes narrowing, ears tuned to the wind, the metal, the silence. "Get me a torque wrench," he said softly, pointing toward a panel no one had dared touch. The young tech hesitated. "That area's not part of the fault code. I know," Elijah said, not raising his voice. "Get me the wrench." Something about his tone made the tech obey. Elijah opened the panel with steady hands. Inside was a tangle of wires, sensors, and memory chips. He studied it for a few seconds, then reached in, not randomly but with surgical precision, and adjusted a cable most others would have overlooked. The onlookers watched, half curious, half amused. To them, this was a sideshow. To Elijah, this was a conversation with a machine he knew like an old friend. Silence wrapped around the runway like a storm waiting to break. Elijah worked quietly, almost rhythmically, his fingers moving through wires and circuits like a pianist finding lost notes. He didn't need a manual. Every panel, every bolt, every hidden flaw in this jet, he knew it. Because decades ago, he had worked on birds just like this one in far worse conditions, with bullets flying in no time to fail. He adjusted a misaligned capacitor, tightened a bolt that had just enough slack to kill a signal, cleaned a sensor clouded with residue the diagnostic tools never caught. Then, with a flick of his fingers, he tapped the side of a small circuit board and whispered under his breath, almost like he was speaking to the jet, "Wake up, girl. One more flight." No drama, no shouting, just a man and his machine reunited. He stood up slowly, looked at the pilot still strapped inside the cockpit, nodded once. "Try it now." There was hesitation. Everyone expected failure. But the commander gave the signal. The pilot flipped the ignition. For a breathless second, nothing. Then a deep mechanical hum began to rumble from within the aircraft. A vibration rippled through the runway. Lights on the panel blinked to life. The F-16 coughed once, twice, and then roared. The engine came alive like a sleeping beast reawakened. The ground shook. Mechanics staggered back. The impossible had happened in front of their eyes. Cheers broke out. A tech dropped his wrench in disbelief. The pilot raised a thumb from the cockpit. And yet, in the middle of it all, Elijah didn't smile. He didn't pose. He just took a small cloth from his back pocket, wiped his hands, and quietly began walking away. To him, this wasn't a miracle. It was just another day of doing what he was born to do. For a few long moments, no one moved. The roar of the jet still echoed off the hangars, but it wasn't the sound that silenced them, it was the realization. The old man they had mocked, doubted, and dismissed had just done what the entire engineering crew, with all their tech and training, could not. The young engineer who had scoffed earlier took a slow step forward, eyes wide. "Sir, who are you?" Elijah paused mid-step. He turned slightly, not with pride, but with the quiet confidence of someone who had nothing left to prove. "I'm just someone who listened when machines used to whisper," he said. "Back when we didn't rely on code to tell us what was wrong, we just knew." The commander approached him, this time with respect. "That jet was mission critical. You may have just changed the outcome of something far bigger than we know." Elijah shrugged, almost humbly. "I didn't do it for the mission. I did it for her," he said, glancing back at the F-16. "Birds like that deserve to fly, not die on a runway because we stopped listening." A younger black airman, watching silently, finally spoke. "Sir, I've never seen anything like that. I want to be like that." Elijah smiled for the first time. Just a small one. "Then don't chase the spotlight. Chase the work. That's where the legacy is." And just like that, he kept walking. No salute, no speech, just the sound of boots against concrete. Fading, but unforgettable. Behind him, a machine thundered to life. And around him, minds changed. Because legends don't always wear medals. Sometimes they just wear old boots and walk away quietly after saving the day. This wasn't just about fixing a jet. It was about remembering the hands that built history and the voices we stopped listening to. Elijah Morgan wasn't a superhero. He was a man shaped by struggle, sharpened by purpose, and forgotten by a system that never truly saw him. Until the day he reminded them who he was without saying a word. In a world obsessed with noise, he was a quiet revolution. A black veteran, a forgotten genius, a living legacy. And here's the truth, there are thousands more like him. Black men and women whose brilliance goes unseen, uncelebrated, erased from the headlines but carved deep into the bones of history. If this story moved you, even a little, then don't scroll past. Hit that subscribe button. Because we're telling the stories they tried to bury, the stories that matter, the ones that make you feel, think, and never forget. We don't chase clout, we honor legacy. And this is just the beginning.